Hello and welcome back to part of our series for the Women in Tech Sales Month here at Your Sales Co. And I'm very excited to have Jen here. Welcome, Jen.
Hi, thanks very much. No, excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome. So, as you know, Jen, we are interviewing a whole host of women in tech sales, and I'm really excited to get you on. I know that we're able to meet in person for the first time in Sydney only a few weeks ago, and so I want to get to know you a little bit more, get to know your journey. So tell me a little bit about your journey into sales. Was this what you wanted to do? Tell me about where you've come from and how you got into
Yeah,
the
it's probably
industry.
not the most conventional way people get into sales, and I think that's probably the same answer for a lot of people. But I was never in tech. So prior to COVID, I was working in the travel industry. Absolutely loved it. Have a degree in it. It was my passion. It was exactly what I wanted to do. But as you can expect, COVID put a bit of a damper onto that, and I found myself without a job. And just through just a contact, I got in touch with someone in the tech industry, and it kind of took me back a little bit, thinking, I don't know nothing about this. Can I do this? And then I said, why not? I can give it a shot and see what I've got, and there's nothing to lose. So that's kind of how I got into the tech industry, purely by almost a little bit of luck and knowing the right people. And I've never looked back. I'm extremely happy with the choice, I guess, jumping into it. And yeah, I've been doing it for 3.5 years now, and it's definitely been one of the best decisions I've made.
Wow, how cool. What a great segue into the industry. I always remember doing like in the tech sales training courses, or actually in any sales training course, early on in my early career when I was much younger, we would go through these through these sessions, and people would ask, they'd be like, raise your hand if you said you wanted to be in tech sales. And everyone would laugh, and they'd all like, keep their hands down. And like, I don't think anybody ever comes out of school or university and comes into the working, the industry of work life, and then they're like, yes, this is what I want to be, this is what I'm going to do. So very, very interesting. And so, but you were obviously in sales because you were in the, with the flight center, you were selling holidays and flights, etc. How did you find the transition of going from selling something to, let's say, consumers, to moving into that business to business sales, especially in a tech
Yeah, it's
industry?
very different. It's much more of a must-have sort of industry where there is a real requirement for someone to have something right, rather than I want to have a great time and go on holidays. But I think for me, the transition was a little bit easier in a sense of I'm just taking the skills that I had in that previous role, and just applying it to a different industry. So you're not really changing a whole lot of things. You're just transferring those skills and learning more about a new product, for example. So you instead of going from selling holidays, you're now selling tech. And even my journey within tech sales, it's taken a little bit of time, right? I started off really in that BDR, or sales development role, where I began, and that's where I was really comfortable in. And the opportunity kind of arose to become in that real straight on sales role, and it definitely put some fear into me. I wasn't sure if it was something I could do, and it was very, very hesitant to kind of jump in and take that leap. But it took me a little while, probably around a year, to make that final decision. And ultimately, it was definitely the right decision. It just gave me a whole new lease on life and a whole new different perspective on it. So in terms of like what transferable skills, like it is very similar. It's just a different thing that you're selling, whether you're selling to people who are consumers or selling to businesses. Um, yeah, you just change a little bit, but there is a lot of things that kind of correlate between them.
Yeah, so you're seeing so a lot of the similar processes, conversations, techniques, because ultimately people are buying from people. So whether you're selling a holiday or whether you're selling DLP through Netskope, you still have to connect with people. You're still solving a problem, and you're still then delivering an outcome. I guess that it's just having different triggers to pull as well. Because like you say, it could be a nice to have. Flights will be one of the first things that a lot of people would stop doing. Whereas in cybersecurity, they don't have that luxury of saying, oh, we're just not going to do it this year. It's just not part of our roadmap. And you mentioned there about, mindset and about taking that time to really build into that role. What supported you? So again, for anybody listening to this that is maybe like, I'm not sure about getting into tech sales, or, what happens if I get in there and I'm not sure? What helped you overcome that mindset or really work through that to know that this was the right thing
Yeah,
for you?
I'm definitely very lucky with the team that we have. And I just sat down with each individual person to get their view and their perspective. And they were people that knew me really well. So they could give me an honest opinion on what they thought, not only of their job and their role, but also is there something you could do as well? And then they were nothing but supportive. But I think, if anything, the biggest thing I could recommend to someone is talking to other people who are in those roles and getting an understanding of what they do day to day. Is that something interesting? Can you shadow someone for a day to see what their day looks like and what are some of the things that they're doing? Because ultimately, sometimes you can jump into a role and really have no idea what it's about. But by just talking to people and talking to yourself and just getting a bit more of an understanding of what people do and how they do their jobs can give you a lot more confidence ultimately to decide to do it yourself or not. And yeah, I think that helped me the most.
Yeah, awesome. And you mentioned before about your network is obviously that how you were able to get into the industry. Was that LinkedIn or was it something else?
That was something else. It was just mostly internal relationships that I had built up. I just think in sales, it's one of the most important things that you can have is good relationship. You said it before, people buy from people, and that's where you can build those great relationships. But that also counts for within your job as well, or the people that you might be working with. And yeah, that's how I found my role here at Netskope. Is I had a great relationship with someone in the travel industry who knew someone at Netskope, and they said, "Hey, I think she'd be really good for this job." So just having that really great relationship with someone internally, you just never know where that might lead you down the track. Me having a great relationship with that person, the last thing on my mind was getting a job somewhere else in 3 months' time. So you just never know what comes out of building those relationships and keeping them really, really strong. And I think the biggest part of that is just really being yourself. Like, if I'm not myself and if I'm pretending to be something that I'm not, it's not going to come across the way that I want to. So that's how I found the best way to do it personally.
Yeah, absolutely. And that authenticity needs to come across in any sales scenario, or actually any scenario in any part of what you're doing in business and in life. You need to be authentic. And again, I give examples, and I know that we've worked together for a little while, but when we're looking at the examples of like the templates and the emails and the way that the different approaches as well that you can take, it's about bringing it into you. And one of the things I always say, like I always still talk about things like I'd love to show you, or it would be awesome to be able to do this. But if you don't use those words in a day-to-day conversation, don't use them in a sales conversation, because when they meet you, they'll be like,
Not
that
you.
sounds
Yeah.
different. Like what you're saying sounds different to this. And therefore it's just about coming back to actually we're all human. We all, we have limitations of our knowledge. We have people that we can expand our relationships and our network to. And it's about then supporting them, in, I guess, really in those different ways. And so you've been introduced to Netskope. Do you find then for you, are you a bit of a champion now to find other people to come into Netskope? Like, do you find people ask you about your journey? What's your role at the moment in terms of empowering other people to come
Yeah.
into the sales world?
I think it's mostly you meet a lot of people in the industry when we're out at events, or we're out in the world and seeing lots of people from other organizations, and they're always asking about the way that we're doing things and then the relationships that we've built internally. And even in my personal life, a lot of people get really scared of the word sales, and they come to me saying like, I could never do your job. Like that sounds terrifying. It's like, it's not as scary as you might think it is. You definitely have to take a leap of faith sometimes, but I think it's trying to put people's mind at ease just a little bit to say, not that scary. You're just being yourself and you're just talking to somebody else. Um, it's all human to human at the end of the day. But yeah, in terms of bringing more people into the team, like it's always growing every single week. I think there's a new person joining in the team, and the great thing is we're always talking to each other saying, oh, do you know somebody who wants to get into the industry? It doesn't necessarily mean someone with a lot of experience. I didn't have a lot of experience, but it's all about who's got the right mindset and the right attitude, because we can teach you about the product, but do you have the right attitude and mindset into getting things done and getting in there? Like that's what you're ultimately looking for in the right person. And like that's how we find people, right? Like it's not necessarily about who's got the biggest LinkedIn profile out of everyone. It comes into it sometimes a little bit, but yeah, we're always talking to each other saying, who do you know and how can we bring more people in?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, when it comes into to that sales conversation, like you say, you've done it. You're a great example to then bring somebody through, and then again to then be able to then bridge that gap. I always used to find if they were, again, sales is scary, but if you then say I'm in tech sales or I'm in cybersecurity sales, people look at you like you have four heads, and then they're like, well, like, how do you do this? And then they think then that you're really technical as well. And I'm like,
No.
no, I'm not technical. I understand the outcomes. I understand the servicing, the offerings, the way that we can help the examples, the use cases. It's about bridging those gaps to be able to then deliver an outcome. And then you bring in the really smart people that come in that don't want to do our jobs of, calling people and emailing and going out to fancy dinners and lunches and, to try and woo these clients to get them over the line. And so in terms of, obviously the sales process, we know that rejection is part of the course, right? We know that that is part of it. Again, depends on how you look at it. I always think about rejection as it's not personal. It's not attack on me. It's just that it's not a right for them for right now. You never know what will happen in 6, 12, 18 months. And so it's just about starting that conversation. If you think about someone you met, for the very first time, you might be like, oh, they're not very friendly, or they're a little bit off with me. Same thing with people that you reach out to. It depends on what you've caught them in. Are they having a terrible day and you've just added to that list? Or are they really open if we caught them at the perfect time? And so if you're dealing with rejection, if you've got people saying, oh no, I don't want to speak to you, we're all good, how do you keep going in that role? How do you keep picking up the phone the next time? What's your any
It
tips?
is really tough. Like that is going to be the toughest part of the job. And anyone who's in that role where they're cold calling every single day, like it's a really hard job. But it's one of those things where persistence and consistency is going to pay off. And yes, you're going to have days where things aren't working out, no one's picking up, or you're getting a few people a little bit rude to you because they're not at the right time, and it can get to you. But you're completely right to say it's not personal and just move on. They're not going to remember who you were in 3 months from now. They're not going to remember that phone call. You might, but they're absolutely not. I think one of the biggest tips that I implement myself is, well, two things. One is to really just block off that time to say, this is when I want to be doing a task that's can take a little bit of a toll on you if things don't go the right way. If things are going the right way, stick with it, keep going, because your energy is going to feed into that. But if things are going the wrong way, similarly, your energy is going to feed into that. So then just know to tell yourself, like, I need to stop for a little bit, go take a coffee, go take your dog for a walk, get out, and then reset yourself, because whatever energy you're feeling at that time is going to show through a phone call to another person. So that's probably my biggest thing that I do. Yeah. Things are going really well, keep going. If it's not, just call it and go again an hour later.
Yes. Yeah. That is great advice, because again, I think, it's like anything. I remember like when I was flying back actually from Sydney, I was on the plane and I'm trying to get this work done. And I think I looked at the same document for a solid hour. I didn't do anything on it. I just looked at it because I was like, my brain just wasn't working. And so what I then did was I was like, actually, I'm going to close my laptop. I'm going to listen to a podcast, and then I'll come back to it in an hour, because it takes forever to get back from Sydney to Perth. So I was like, I'll come back to it in an hour, or I'll do it tomorrow. Again, it's about finding that balance and finding the right thing for you. Because like you said, it will show in the work that you do, it will show in the response that you give, it will show in the energy that you give as well. So that's really good.
Taking that 20 minutes to go for that walk or have that coffee might sound unproductive, but it can be a lot more productive if you're in the right mindset. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Great tip. I'm sure lots of people will be able to take that on. So on the flip side, then, if you've got a big sales presentation, if you've got a great opportunity you're working on, do you have any little rituals? Is there anything you do before you go in? Do you make sure you've sent something? Do you have to wear a certain color? Anything that you can share with us, as you know, so we know how Jen ticks?
I don't have a ritual or anything where I have to have my lucky socks on or anything like that. But yeah, I always call up. If it's a really important thing, I try to call up my boss and be like, hey, put my mind at ease. What are some of the things I should do? I'll make a list of some of the things I need to remember, because sometimes if things can get a little bit stressful or you're a little bit nervous about something, you can easily forget to do things. So it's not necessarily a ritual, but that's probably some of the steps that I would take, is just having that set out, logging on like a couple of minutes early to be ready and not have to stress about what if, my Zoom isn't updated or anything like that. That's the last thing that you want to be worried about. But I don't really have anything like a ritual. Maybe I should try and implement something and see if it works.
If it works for you. Yeah, exactly. Again, I think some people either have it or they don't. I don't have one. But again, I think I've got all my notes in there. I know exactly like you said about testing things. The thing I find really stressful is that I have a camera in my screen, and every now and again it just decides it needs updating, and that means we have to find the update it, reset everything. And so again, that's always my thing. But also having a backup makes me feel really, really confident in that, because I know I can pull my laptop out, use the camera on the laptop, and we're all good. So again, there's lots of ways around it, always having that backup. But I like the fact that you then can ring your manager or somebody else and kind of go, tell me this is going to go really well. Remind me of the things that I need reminding of, because we all need reminding of that sometimes, don't we?
But he's always there.
Yeah, you've got this. We are, you're going to have a great meeting. Remember this, go in with that, and and give it your all, because you've got nothing to lose.
I couldn't agree more with that. There's definitely, that was one of the big things with sales when I was jumping into it. You have nothing to lose. That was one of the big things. Like, what is the worst thing that can happen?
Yeah.
Could be no good at it. Well, then I tried. I'm never going to think about what if I didn't try it. That was one of the key drivers, what ultimately pushed me to do it. Yeah. But what is there left? What is there to lose? Absolutely nothing.
What is there to lose? Yeah, that's a really good point. Really good point. Any podcast recommendations, books, tools, tips, anything that you immerse yourself in or has helped you kind of get to where you are today?
I usually just go into LinkedIn and see if anyone else has shared something interesting, because they've already filtered it out for me to find something cool to listen to. I'm not very good at finding the right thing usually. So using LinkedIn is my kind of go-to. Someone shared a cool podcast or an article. Usually my way to go. Anything that's short and sweet is definitely what I prefer and can keep my attention. I can listen to it for half an hour when I'm going for a walk. It's fantastic. That's my way to go normally.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Again, it's interesting because I find I like a short podcast, but I also do equally like a long one that I can get really into, and that I can then, listen over a couple of car journeys. I feel like that for me is always good, because sometimes I find the short ones get too much into the selling bit of which, again, here's me talking about selling. They pitch themselves for too long. In those short episodes, you've got 30 minutes and 10 minutes of it is telling me why I should be listening. And I'm like, just get to the point. I already listen. I'm subscribed. Let me in.
Yes, that can be very true.
Yeah, awesome. So let's round up with one last question. So in terms of anybody listening to this, they're thinking about getting into the industry, any tips for them? What would you say for them to do, to, how to approach it? Anything, any final remarks?
I think one of the big things is, one, you need to find the right sales path. So we're looking at tech sales here. If that's not right for you, there's lots of different other ways that you can go about it. Be really active on LinkedIn, talk to people, talk to recruiters, find the right role for you and the right culture and environment. But ultimately, I think I said it a few times now, if you're a little bit scared, ask yourself, ultimately, what have I got to lose by giving this a shot? Whether that is taking up an internship, starting off in that business development before moving into sales. Sometimes it is a little bit of a journey. So roll with it, go on that journey and you'll eventually land where you want to land, as long as you put in that hard work and yeah, just go for it, really. That's the biggest thing I can say.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. And again, I think that is really good advice. Now, just one thing you said there about business development into sales, a lot of people think it's the same thing. Can you
Of course.
determine for you,
Yeah,
and obviously again for you at Netskope, business development, then into sales, tell me
of
what the
course.
difference is between those
Yeah,
two?
so generally, business development people, they are really in the trenches, if I could say, of trying to find new business. They're the ones cold calling and emailing every single day, and that's all they do. Once they find someone who's interested in the product, they will hand that over to an account executive, someone who is in that full time sales role, and they will then run through that full sales process. If you're in that account management position, you're still going to be doing cold calling and outreach, but you just have multiple hats that you'll be wearing at that stage, which is, I guess, the ultimate goal for a lot of people. They want to get to that stage where they're really involved with the whole sales cycle, from finding that business to ultimately closing a deal. So starting off with just that business development or finding new opportunities gives you a lot of exposure into the world of sales, and really one of the hardest parts of it. But it makes you a better salesperson or account executive down the line as well, because you have that experience in the past as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And again, it's that it gives you that journey to go from I'm a business development, I'm focusing on having conversations, and it's that quick conversion of let's have a conversation. Is there an opportunity? Can I get you into somebody to have a conversation? For what you're doing now, you'll be receiving some of those opportunities, but then also then you're managing partners, you're managing end users, you're managing your requirement to go out to market at the same time as well. So again, having that learning and that understanding and that experience builds into, and it's those building blocks that you can build onto to come into that role and be successful. Whereas if we skip that bit and go straight in, you've got so much to
Mhm.
learn.
Exactly right. It
Mm,
definitely gives you a
yeah.
really good foundation to be better throughout your career. So it's a great starting point.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. Thank you so much. For those listening, we've got mindset, we've been through how to get into the industry, a cool story from Jen about how she got into the industry. Again, every tech sales role is different. There's different requirements, there's different setups, there's different development and onboarding. So again, as Jen said, go out there, ask questions, get to know people, get on LinkedIn. It's one of the best platforms out there to be able to find out what other people are doing. Message people. If you've seen somebody that's doing something that you think you would like to do, message them. Find out how they got into that industry. Find out if they would recommend the company. Find out who recruited them, so on and so forth, and really just explore. It's a fantastic industry to be in. And obviously, Jen, you've been there for the last 3 years. And it's been great to hear. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and your experiences. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. You're off to an event this
Yes,
evening,
I
aren't you?
am. I'll get dressed up in a few hours, so I'm looking forward to it. But thank you very much for having me. It's been really great.
You're welcome. All right, wonderful. Thanks, Jem.